Yeah, it's been plus the been able to do all the conversations.
Being blocked from your own meeting.
So that's what
A lot of requests for those links.
I have a lot.
It's just so hard to get people to go. But we have a good group. This is a good group. I'm satisfied.
Us.
Just one moment, everyone. We're just getting our Zoom software working. Hmm?
I don't know what I've done here.
Oh, in terms of what? Getting it up on the. You want on laptop or on PC? Is that all set up right? Oh, how to view them? Yeah, usually that. Yeah, speaker would be it. There usually be a gallery view with the speaker. Are they able to hear us and interact? We don't know yet. Okay. Right.
Yeah, that is.
They gotta work.
Well, you know what I'm trying to do. There we go.
Ah, perfect. Okay. Are we ready for roll? Oh, just. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, for being here for Faculty Senate this crisp, wet December day. We'll begin with the roll call.
All right. I want to hear Stanford. Bellin. Boyd. Brandenburg. Here. Aromatica. Carmack. Chang.
Thanks.
Council.
Here.
Cuomo. Here. Doms. Davis.
Here.
Dutz.
Here.
Dyer. Here. Edelman. Here. Elias. Green. Here. Griffin.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Hampton. Hester.
Here.
Jansen.
Here.
Yara Pasmino. Here. Khan. Bozos. Gavin Lee.
Here.
Sungwon Lee.
Here.
Maggiano.
Here.
Mason. Matthews. McLean.
Here.
Moon.
Here online.
Morales. Here. Olivia Parker. Here. Harry.
Here.
Phillips.
Amy Yarbrough is here online for Laura Phillips.
Thank you. Riker.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Rollins. Song.
Here.
Shepherd.
Here.
Shin.
Here.
Swift.
Here.
Sykes. Talbot. Waters.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Wentz. Here. Wofford. And Yang.
Here.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. The minutes from the November meeting have been approved electronically. And we're going to have our administrative reports, as the president's not here yet and the provost has a recording that we'll be watching. I think we'll do reverse order and start, if it's okay with you, David, to talk with us about core impacts.
Good morning. We've been sharing with folks across campus about the core impacts. We've shared with Provost Council. I've been going around with individual departments that are involved in the change, and also met with some of the college curriculum committees. And we're happy to meet with any departments, units, individuals who have questions. But we did want to share with Faculty Senate. The Provost put together a kind of working group to think about this. Jeff is on that group along with me, the provost, Donna Haley from the registrar's office, and then Maggie Miller from UWG Online is involved in that work. And I think that's everyone, really Dr. Akins as well is involved. So, but we just want to briefly kind of update you in terms of what this means, what it is and what it means for the Faculty Senate. Let's see here. So what does impacts mean? Really, this is kind of the way I think about it is this is really a change, not necessarily in the core curriculum, but how we represent the core curriculum to our students. So we really want to think of it more as a realignment. For some of you who have been here at West Georgia for a while, you may know that a number of years ago, there was a proposal to make a fairly radical change to the core curriculum, reducing the number of hours and making some other significant changes. This is not that, right? This is the same amount of hours, 42 hours, and will just simply be moving our current kind of core areas into some new, what I think was boxes. So impacts really kind of reflects these new core areas. So if you think about the acronym for impacts, these are the new core areas that those are going to align with. So one for institution, one for mathematics and quantitative reasoning, one for political science and history to meet the Georgia state requirement, one for arts and humanities, communicating and writing, STEM, and social sciences. What you will notice is these are essentially our area A through E with a few minor changes that we'll talk about. So impacts, when we talk about impacts, we're really talking about these new, an acronym for these new core areas. Our framework in terms of this work is really guided by 4 documents from the University System of Georgia, and those are listed here for you to look at. They're also in the folder that we'll be sharing with the Faculty Senate, so you can look at those as well. And folks who've been working on this already have been working through the information in these documents and reaching out to USG if we've had questions. But those are available for you to look at, and they do provide a lot more in-depth information if you have questions about any of the particular changes here related to it. Going down to, let's see here. Let's see. So what are the major changes? These are the ones that I think really impact us the most here. And these all come from the USG documents. The primary motivation is to make the core more meaningful for students by doing a number of different things. One is by renaming them, so we move away from the core area A, B, C, D, E, which doesn't necessarily have a lot of meaning for students, to some language that might make them a little more meaningful. The other big change is a change in learning outcomes. Before this, institutions, through some frameworks provided by the UWG, were allowed to kind of create their own learning outcomes. And if you look at our current learning outcomes in the core, not for courses, but core learning outcomes, what you'll see is that we have, for most of our core areas, 2 or 3 learning outcomes for each core area, which makes it actually pretty challenging to assess as core areas, which we're required to do. What you'll notice is that the new learning outcomes will be standardized now across the UWG. Typically, one learning outcome per core area. Actually, this is a positive for us because it'll mean it'll be simpler for us to assess those core areas. Which the education assessment committee does. The only core area that will have more than one is the writing area. What you think of as first year writing, 1101, 1102, there are 4 learning outcomes there. What you'll notice though is documentation. We've got a document that kind of looks at our current learning outcomes and the new learning outcomes. What you'll notice is they line up fairly well. There really is no significant changes in terms of those learning outcomes. So in terms of making that transition, I don't think that will be difficult to do. The other thing though that's been added is that for each core area, there will be career-ready competencies for each of these areas. And we'll look at some examples of those here in just a minute. But obviously, the goal here is to help students to think about what skills am I learning in these core areas, these core courses, that'll help prepare me not only for my major, but for a future career. There are some changes that impact what we now call Area F, but what will now be called Field of Study. And we've really been encouraging departments and programs to look at the material in the impacts documents and to see how they might impact their own particular field of study or area F. But one thing, for example, that's included is that programs can now include upper level courses in area F. You can't require it, but you can include it. So for example, if a student took a course, 1,000 or 2,000 level course in area F and another part of 4, you can kind of guide them to an upper level course that they might need for the major to take there, and it will count there. You just simply can't require it. But you can list it. You can encourage through advisement and other ways for students to take them. So I think that's a really an important benefit. And of course, all of this is really designed to facilitate ease of transferability between USG schools, which is an important priority for the university system of Georgia. So when we look at the new core impacts, what we're really looking at for each area will have what they call an orienting question for that area, a learning outcome or learning outcomes, and then a list of career competencies. Everyone will have those. And those are standard. Those are going to be standardized. So we can certainly add to those, but we can't change those that are listed there. And that will be included for each of the courses. And if you look at an example of this from STEM, what we now call Area B, but for STEM, here's an example of what that looks like. There'll be an orienting question. How do I ask scientific questions or use data, mathematics, or technology to understand the universe? Pretty straightforward. There'll be one learning outcome, which you see there that has to do with the scientific method. And then there are career competencies, and typically there are 2 or 3, and they're very much like this. So these 3 have to do with inquiry and analysis, problem solving, and teamwork. That doesn't mean that your course can include other career competencies, but they should be aligned with these 3 specific career competencies. There are descriptions of those 3 career competencies in the documentation. In other words, what these things specifically mean. So to just give you a broader framework here, as we kind of move out from that, here is just a where you can see all of the areas. So you'll see the core impact areas there in the first column, the orienting question for each impact area in the second one, the learning outcome or learning outcomes in the third, And then the career readiness competencies in the final or fourth column there. What you'll notice again is for all of these, except for one, there's now just one standardized learning outcome that will be used at all institutions across the USG. The only distinction, and as I scroll down here, I think you will see it on the next page, will be will be in the writing, and communicating section, where they're for. But again, if you look at our current learning outcomes and then look at these, you'll find that they actually really align pretty well. These are basically just reformulations or restatements that are very close, approximate to our current learning outcomes. So in terms of this kind of alignment, realignment, moving things over, this slide really allows us to kind of see how this will happen. We're really not making any changes to the core beyond these kind of general policies, for example, around adding add upper level courses to field of study. We're really just moving our current core courses into these new areas. And this is kind of how it maps out. So like core area B1 would move into the institutional priorities section. Core area B2 would also move into that section. Core area A2, the mathematics, what we think of now as their kind of core level math, would move into a similarly named area in the new impacts. Core area E is going to kind of be moved into two different sections. Our political science and US history courses that we currently require in the core will move into what's called the political science and US history or citizenship section. You'll notice there it says at least 3 hours. That does not mean that we have to combine those courses into 3 hours. We'll keep those two courses as they are. They both will be required for state law. The only reason that language is there is there are a couple of USG institutions which only have one course that meets that requirement. For example, like at Georgia Tech. So that's the only reason that language is there in terms of at least 3 hours. It doesn't mean that we can't have more hours there, which we will. Core area C will be exactly the same in terms of arts, humanities, and ethics. And you see there are these 6 credit hours. So we'll have the same framework with essentially what we think of as a C1 and a C2. Written communication will essentially remain the same. We'll have English 1101 and 1102 as those 6 hours. Core area D will essentially remain the same. You have to have at least 7 hours. We will retain our 10 to 11 hours. So we'll be at the same 42 hours, but it will move into there. And then in area with the social sciences area will be 3 credit hours as it is now in terms of the social science elective. And then the field of study with some changes in terms of what can be included there will remain the same as well, 18 hours. So how will institutional governance, the role that you play here at West Georgia, play into this? And what I've included here is just literally the quotation from the USG documents, which I think is kind of important just to see what they're saying about this. And what they say is in large part, the proposed changes with core impacts are changes in the names we give to core areas. There are no changes mandated in what courses can go in each area. The system-wide learning outcomes are broadly written so that existing institutional outcomes should fit within the system-wide outcomes. And existing courses in areas should fit within the renamed core area. Given all of this, we do not think that an institutional governance review is needed, especially as the changes being made are per revised board policy, which needs to be followed. If institutions choose to institute a review, it should be conducted quickly so that there is sufficient time to implement the required changes. Okay. So essentially what we're doing is a reforming. That doesn't mean that going forward, the University of West Georgia can make changes to its core. We do that all the time. We added a couple of new courses to the core curriculum last year. So we can continue to add and delete courses as we desire to do through our usual faculty governance process. All of that goes up through UPC and through the faculty senate. So timeline for this. The USG has asked us to develop a communication plan around this, which we are in the process of doing. We'll work to make the changes to the academic catalogs. Departments and programs will need to kind of look at their programs of study, particularly the field of study, to see if any changes are needed there. We'll have training to provide faculty and staff and administrators with information on what these changes mean for students. The soft launch this spring will be to include what we're going to call, and I'm going to show them to you in just a minute, the syllabus templates for each core area and with each course in that area. We'll look at that in just a minute. That's all we really have to do in the spring in terms of kind of work with courses. Obviously, the registrar, ITS and others will be working, have already been working, will be working in the spring to make changes that will kind of go through our banner system and eventually populate into the new catalog. That work has been going on already. And then full implementation will be in the fall, where we will have a new catalog that reflects the new core impact areas. So one of the things that we mentioned was that there will be a syllabus template that will be attached to each course in the core. And basically, this is just a little preface that will be added to the course as a way to kind of frame it within this new core impact framework. Here's an example of one for English 1101 in the communication section. So what you'll notice is it's not very long. This would go at the very top of the course syllabus. It basically kind of tells students what core impacts are. It gives the student orienting question. It gives students the learning outcomes, the core learning outcomes. You can continue to add and include in your syllabus the course learning outcomes, which have been approved by departments and here at West Georgia. And then we'll also include the career competencies there at the very bottom. So you'll notice there those three things: orienting question, learning outcomes, career competencies will be included on each syllabus. Right? Now the question has come up: can we make changes to these? We cannot. We need to include this as it is. But you're free to add anything you want to below that might help to orient or further clarify for students the relationship between these required frameworks and your particular course. We do that all the time. You think about the course catalog description for your course, usually it's just one sentence. I usually include a much fuller description of the course for my students in my syllabus, and you are more than welcome to continue to do those things to help the students understand the relationship between these elements that'll be on all syllabi throughout the university system of Georgia and your particular course. Our goal is to get this pre-populated into concourse. We're actually working on this now. Here's a mock-up of one that we have already. So you can kind of see what that looks like. So when the student opens up the course in the concourse, it'll already be there. When you create your course, it'll already be there. And so you won't have to do anything with it. You just need to go ahead and create the rest of your course. We're hopeful that we're going to have all of that in place before syllabi are beginning to be created for the spring. That may not happen, and if so, we'll let you know, and then we'll just simply ask you to take these syllabi and add them to your course. You can add them at another section. As long as they're included, that's the most important thing. And we'll help you with that. I hope we'll know a little more here in the early next week, whether we're going to be able to get these in all of the core areas. IPS and UWG online has been working really hard to get this in the banner so that it'll populate, and then faculty won't have to do anything related to that. So that's a quick overview of impacts and the kind of work that's ahead of us. I want to stop here and see if there are any kind of questions that you might have about core impacts.
Sorry, thank you. If I'm presuming that Wolf Watch is going to change, and they're going, so probably coming in, how do we start with help the students not to freak out? You know, I've got a lost little core area B2.
It's going to be complicated because, you know, students can elect to graduate under any catalog. They've been a student for the last 5 years. So for a period of time here, we're going to have students under different, and students are evaluated in terms of their degree based on a particular catalog that they declare. So for a period of time, we're actually gonna have students that are kind of progressing through and graduating under both frameworks. And we've had that before in the past, back in '98, when we went from quarter to semester system for a number of years. We had some students on the quarter system and some on the semester. So we've been through that transition before. This will be easier than that. But it will be complicated, and I think faculty and advisors and others are gonna have to be knowledgeable enough to help students kind of understand the difference. Essentially, it's the same thing, but in terms of the representation, you're right. You know, I think that is going to be confusing for students to need help with that. I think for new students coming in, it's gonna be pretty straightforward, because that's the only thing they're gonna do. But it's the other students who might be confused about this. If they're already in at West Georgia and say in their second year, taking a core course, and all of a sudden there's this new framework, and they're like, what is that? I don't understand what that is. So I think faculty in those classes, advisors, others are really gonna have to kind of work to help clarify. It's a really good question.
So it's not the advisor faculty say, it's not the end of the world, chill out, it's just change your name, and just don't panic.
Okay,
Right, thank you.
very good. Other questions?
On-course question. So if we have taught a course for a while and we usually copy a syllabus from one semester to another, moving forward, if we did that, will it populate correctly or?
It should, yeah, and those are the kind of little details we're trying to work out, but it should just simply be at the very beginning, you know, when you roll a course over, you'll see like the catalog description, and then sometimes at the bottom, there are other kinds of information particular to that particular college or school, same thing here. So your information should roll over, and then these should just be the frameworks for that, for the syllabus. At least that's our hope, Laura. We'll see what happens as this plays out.
How does this work for area, what would traditionally be area F courses? Is there language that needs to be included for those, or is that on the programs to decide on, or is that just kind of?
If the courses in area F are core courses, they'll have the template information around it. Obviously, though, faculty in those programs can add additional information to them. And I do think it's really up to us to kind of look at area F to see if some of the changes in terms of what can be concluded might impact particular programs. There's one we've run into already with BA programs with foreign language that we're looking at. Rob Kilpatrick has been just a champion in terms of trying to think this through and to see what the implications may be. And so there may be some places there where there are going to need to be some changes to area F, but area F is so specific to individual departments and programs. That's really going to have to be done on a more individual basis. And I didn't want to talk a lot about it here because that's kind of specific to individual programs. But I'm happy to talk with any program that wants us to sit down and look at their area F or field of study and see what needs to be changed. Good question. Yes, sir.
Oh, area E, QBS is that right now?
Area E,
E.
area D.
Yeah.
Area D essentially will remain the same as it is now. Yeah, area D is one of those that essentially is just shifting right over, because right now, area D is about mathematics, science, and technology. It's the same area as we move it over. And it tells us that it has to have at least, I think, 7 hours, but we can include more. And we're gonna, we'll just basically including the same number of hours because we have to meet that 42-hour threshold. Other questions? Jeff, thank you.
Okay, thank you so
Thank you
very
so
much. Are you okay to back up or clean up?
Oh, yeah.
Not back up. Because the provost has a video for us to watch. Is that ready to go? And that'll be his report, and then we'll give the time over to you. Oh, it's on Yeti microphone, I think. Audio's.
It has to be, so then
What's that?
it has to be.
Oh.
Yeah, I wonder if that would.
Maybe your laptop can pick up.
That's an interesting.
Let's hope that will make this. We'll
Let
need
me
to hear
let me
it.
try this and see. This- Hold on. Oh. Boy, that's so quiet.
So, yeah, sure.
You want me to turn that on?
Let's put on captions and see if we can make it work.
I think volume on the projector control screen.
Yeah, maybe that's right.
Oh, that's a good idea. Let's see.
In fact, the report on their findings with additional questions in some certain areas where, and
He's echoing. Is it because?
volume on.
You'll have to turn off the mic that's on the Zoom, it's picking up double.
Yeah.
Happy to say that UWG is very well positioned relative to the SAC standards. And we've only got probably about half what the average number of standards are to address. Looking forward to that upcoming on-site review. And then many of you and leaders across the institution have worked hard not only to meet those standards for years, but also to put together that report and articulate how we are meeting the standards. So more work to come. Looking forward to hosting that on-site April 1st through 4th. And I'm sure that we will come through that entire process really well. Also looking forward to celebrating commencement with you a week from tomorrow on the 9th of December. So that is a great time in the academic calendar where we get to celebrate all of the great work of our faculty and staff in helping students go from those first year early courses all the way through and celebrate with them and their families and friends as they turn that tassel and graduate. So thank you for everything that you have done to enable that. I know that it takes a huge team and you all have each contributed in different ways. So looking forward to celebrating with you in just over a week for that. I want to give a couple of updates, and I appreciate Dr. Rever giving me some thoughts that have come from the faculty. So I'd like to give you some highlights very quickly on those. First, the ongoing work of the working groups for the College of Math, Computing, and Science, the School of Mental Health and Wellness, and also the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Although I'll say we're not set on that name, that's just a group of the academic programs in CACSI once the new College of Math, Computing, and Science is formed. So great listening sessions, the input that you all are providing and others are providing across campus are coming forward. And one of the key takeaways is that we have some amazing things that are going on all across these different areas. And the working groups have really been impressed not only with the caliber and the diversity of work, but also how we are often separated or siloed in our distinct areas. And one of the outcomes of this process is really bringing people together, aligned around some of these areas and looking at ways we can work better together and really have interdisciplinary focus in some of these key areas. So more details to come, but as you know, we're in the first phase of this, where we're listening and learning and coming up with high strategy level items to address. In the spring semester, we will start dealing with the tactical elements of various departments and organizational structure and bylaws and so forth. But please know that those are going really well. And I appreciate everybody providing input on those. I think it was really helpful for the faculty senate to take that hour and really dive in and appreciate your time last month in doing that. Another item that you all are addressing in the next hour is intellectual property and focusing on how we can support faculty and staff and students as they have great ideas and how they have creative activity and scholarship. So I'll share that in multiple institutions, the intellectual property structure should really focus on being that catalyst for if faculty or students have a creation or a great idea, how can the institution support that? and really take away a lot of the annoyances and a lot of the tactical details of commercialization and monetizing and bringing that value not only to the individual who creates, but also to campus and creating a really vibrant, rich place where people want to come and work here and study here because of all of that capital, that intellectual capital that our faculty and students bring. So I appreciate the UWG Research Foundation and our ability, standing that up in the last year, gives us the ability to really help faculty and students do this in a way that is much, much easier for them. I'd also like to address, I've had some great conversations across the last few years around intellectual property and course materials. As you all know, that this is part of our salaried work when we create courses, but faculty still have the right to utilize these in unique ways. And there's a healthy balance in standardizing and utilizing course materials to make it easy inside of D2L, for example. You load this up, and if we need a new section of a course because enrollment is going up, as it is doing right now, then we would need to instantiate a new section of that course. And if we hire an adjunct faculty to teach that in a time of growth, it makes it really easy for that expert content that our full-time faculty have created to be leveraged in a new section, for example. But I do want to give assurance to the faculty that we are a place where the faculty are the lifeblood and part of the institution. There's no motivation or really any benefit of taking that content, that course content, and using it absent the faculty. So if people have fear that UWG is going to take this content and put it in D2L and then use it without them being front and center, please know that that's not where we're heading. It's really about making it easy to create new sections of the course, to provide a standard experience for students in multiple sections of the same course, where the faculty are coming together and defining those outcomes and what the course should be, and then encoding that into a standard D2L or other, back in the day, it used to be printed course packets in the pre-written bindings, but just managing that intelligently and efficiently. But again, courses evolve, faculty are always on the forefront of that, and the course content is always the purview of the faculty. Another thing that's come up recently, I've had a great conversation with some of the executive team of the Faculty Senate, is around office space and hoteling. In particular, as Appert and that redesign is in its early stages. I had a good conversation with the system office earlier this week, and wanted to make sure that there's no misunderstanding, even though we've been talking about using possible hoteling. We have a lot of office space across campus, and if a faculty member wants that and wants to continue to use it, fantastic, that will be available, of course. But if we've got someone who wants to hotel and maybe work in a lab more often in an office, or meet with students in Starbucks or in the library, we should have the faculty have the flexibility to do that. I was talking with the executive committee earlier this week, and the comment came up that, oftentimes when we put on our syllabus that faculty have office hours, that might be misunderstood, that students think, you're in your office, I'll leave you alone, I'm not supposed to intrude upon that time, when in fact we need the exact opposite. So we can host what I'll say student success time, which in our minds would be office hours. And we can do that in offices, we can do that in public spaces, in coffee. It's a bit cold and rainy this week, but maybe, on beautiful spring days, be outside at a table. And we just have that flexibility. So please know that any conversation on space utilization will certainly provide input from faculty. And along those lines, looking forward to posting more details to come at a meeting of interested faculty on this topic on December 12th. So look for more details there, and we'll have a listening session and a conversation around what does it mean to be on campus and create that vibrant community, but also have flexibility and support people in working in different kinds of places. Another conversation that came up and a point that Dr. Rucker passed on to me was this idea of committee chairs and communicating with other areas across campus, whether that's ITS or business and finance, whatever the case might be. I'm happy for those working groups and the faculty senate committees to be working directly with, but if I can ever facilitate please feel free to email me and say, we're really interested in working with this area on campus, and how can I facilitate and help with that? Last two things I'll pass on very quickly. Happy to share that earlier this month, we had the Chancellor's Cup was given to University of West Georgia again. So we wanted 2 for 2 now. And then
4 months before that April 1st visit. After that April 1st, I think through the 4th visit, we will still have some time to go and do any corrective action, but we are trying very diligently to move forward. One of the things that happens with that is almost like getting a mortgage on a house. If you've been through that experience, like when that process starts, you don't change a whole lot in the middle. So we will put some things through to meet the criteria of SACS that, you know, many of us would go, well, I'm not totally, like, that's not perfect. It's not. Right after we're done with accreditation, we will just go back and revisit those things. So as we go through that experience, please know that we are really focused on making certain that we get to done, just like a good dissertation, instead of seeking perfect for, you know, kind of the articulation. Last week or last month, Dr. Khan, you brought up the budget piece. So 2 things I want to say on that. One, it is 3.7. It wasn't 3.5. I went looked at that number again. I transposed them, so my apologies for that. 2, we were asked at the same time, what was the number last year? What did it get? It's a good question. Last year's a really tough year to answer that question. And I say that because our state appropriation was impacted by the $66 million that came out at the end of the Senate session. So the number we received on the front end was 5.85 as a reduction in state funding. By the time we got our state allocation, and again, this is not perfect math because they don't itemize it. They just give you a state allocation. It comes out of the USG. When the money leaves the legislature, formula funding, it's added up based on the formula and capital and all of these things. And then it goes over to the USG as a block grant. So there isn't Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, West Georgia itemized in there. It's just a block grant of, you know, a couple $1 billion, a few $1 billion. It is then distributed throughout the university system, the library system, state archives, all of those things. So for us, we did not realize a $5.85 million reduction as we were originally estimated. Our number was better than that. All right, so I would have put our reduction, again, it's not perfect math, about 2 million less than that. And that is, for us, it's just the wash. It's what do we get with enrollment and the tuition fees that come from enrollment, and then our block grant from the Board of Regents, which was healthier than we expected it to be. When we went into our budget hearing last year, we were trying to solve for an $8.7 million reduction all in. We ended up having to solve for a reduction that was less than that 8.7 that we expected. And that's a mix of things. So I share that with you because I wish I could, you know, kind of throw up a spreadsheet and take you through the logic of it. That would rely on the process being fully logical, which it is not, because it is a political process that starts in the legislature and then becomes a political process in the Board of Regents. As we go through our process this year, I'll keep you updated on that. But as I said last time, and I'll talk a little about session today too, you know, we don't know how it's going to end until 2 things happen. 1, the legislature closes session and sends the budget to the governor. 2, once the Board of Regents votes on a budget, usually in June. And that number can change. The formula is not funded precisely to every school each year. You know, if a Georgia Tech got all of the state allocation that it was entitled to in the funding formula, the USG and the Board of Regents wouldn't be able to kind of help some other institutions that might be experiencing some variability. So we will see where we land. But I will tell you right now that 3.75 number that we've been given so far is not one that's making us nervous. It might, once we get into session, and that only depends on if the legislature decides that the university system needs substantially less money, the way they did last year, that 66 million. I say that we'll continue on. The legislature is in special session currently. They are redrawing the district maps for the state of Georgia because a judge told them that the maps they drew were illegal. That is changing. That's happening to a variety of states around the country right now. The maps that you're seeing that I believe are about to be sent over to the judge for evaluation. Many of them have gone back to the way they were before they redistricted. They look a little more like that. Certainly that's true in our region. The maps that I've seen so far look a lot like 2019 rather than 2022. So we'll see where that process lands. Know that I believe they have to have the maps back by the 8th. It might be the 1st, but I believe it's the 8th. They don't have to take that long. But that process is moving forward. And then that special session will close. They're not allowed to do anything else during that special session except work on the maps. And then we will move into normal session starting in January. Normal session will have a lot of focus on higher education, I'll tell you that. There are many, many questions that we are getting from legislators. And I'm going to take something that the provost talked about because he didn't address just something as simple as faculty offices. It's important for us to see that issue through the eyes of a funder, like a state legislator. So state legislators from time to time show up at a university campus and they just wander around because they want to see if what we tell them as presidents is true. They'll wander into an academic building on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And they will walk past 45 faculty offices and the doors are all closed and the lights are off. They'll go, where's the big faculty meeting? And there isn't one. I say that because what I just said to you has been said to me by legislators who walk down this campus and many others in this state. And when we say, well, you have to understand people in faculty life work in a wide variety of different places. It's not, an 8 to 5 type of job. It's not that type of work. They go, okay, well then why are we spending $250 a square foot to provide an office that is not used on a regular basis? Now that's a legitimate question. It is a legitimate question, and all of us as taxpayers in the state of Georgia have to have people who ask questions like that. I am the one who has to go and answer that question. And there is not the same tolerance for funding capital projects, and that's true here in Georgia and in other states, for public universities when we can't show that our very expensive buildings are being used all the time. So as we're working through that issue, know that it's not a this year issue. It's not a Pafford issue. It is a public university question that's going to have to be answered in America. We are the ones who have to figure that out. I don't know if hoteling offices is the answer. When I went to my second professorship, it was the first time I had a private office. Every other office, I always had an office mate. And it was ideal if you all had different schedules, right? So then it felt like you had a private office. There are many institutions around that still have that. So that is a real issue that we're going to have to contend with and work through. And it doesn't just count for offices, it counts for classrooms, basically any space. We have to do occupancy studies so we can produce that data for legislators and from time to time for the board. The board's usually much more forgiving than legislators are. Legislators are rather suspect of universities, as you may have noticed, in reading basically any publication over the last few years. So I offer that context because I think it's important for you to understand that. There's also going to be questions in this legislature we expect about dual enrollment. They held study sessions all over the state about dual enrollment, who utilizes it, how is it utilized, why isn't it all consolidated to the technical college system? There are significant questions that are going to be worked through. I don't have any information about where that's going to land right now because it hasn't been taken up. Address the study committee that was in our region by their invitation. We talked about a lot of the partnerships that we have with school districts, which are different than most other universities around the state. Most other universities around the state, they might recruit for dual enrollment, they might, get it organically. We actually go out, meet with the school districts, with principals. We sign agreements that customize how we deliver dual enrollment, so it works for them and it works for us. And that does count in our overall enrollment mix. That's an important part of saving people a year of college. If you can earn 30 credits while you're in high school, have that count for high school, and you walk in and you're able to graduate with an undergraduate degree. For most families in the state of Georgia who send one of their offspring to a university, that makes an enormous financial difference in their ability to get to degree completion. One of the other issues that we'll come up to is carry forward and how we use carry forward. We don't keep a ton of money in carry forward, but bear in mind, we've been through this issue before many times. The legislature does not understand why they allocate money on an annual basis, and we don't spend all of it on students during that fiscal year. They don't understand why we might have a project that, goes over the fiscal year, especially if those accumulations become very large. So that is another issue that we're having to address and work through with them. That's a very complicated and complex process, but it is one I know when I was working in Florida, the legislature got the same burr in their saddle and decided one day to take $500 million, $500 million plus $500 million out of the university system. And all of a sudden we had an $11 million budget cut that day. And that university, we had, faculty startup packages parked in a carry forward account that those faculty members were just spending down as they built their labs, et cetera. And the legislature said, no, we want it all today. So these are, when I say we're going into session, we have a lot of serious issues related to higher ed that we are very diligently working through. I'm going to connect that to one other issue. We spend a considerable amount of time, energy, and effort building relationships so that we can represent the university in the right way, and so that we get positive outcomes for the University of West Georgia, regardless of what's happening throughout this. I say that because anytime we do legislative work, everything has to be consolidated through chain of command. I say that so that nobody who, if you see the legislature doing something that makes you fussy, we'll all talk, right? But please don't take action on that front. The chancellor doesn't have a lot of tolerance for that. Board of Regents doesn't have a lot of tolerance. It doesn't help. It's just complicated. It's complicated anytime you use public money. Every day we use public money at this university, and it is every day complicated as a result. So as we go into the legislature this time, I'll keep you well updated. If you want to have a discussion about any aspect of that, I'm happy to sit down. Dr. Russell Crutchfield will sit down with you. Sarah Powell, our Director of Government Relations, but all of that has to go through us. I said that to also connect to something Dr. Preston said. And he said that, some of the executive committee for the faculty senate were asking, how do we work with different folks around the university? Well, one of the things that I thought I'd decode that. Dr. Reverend and I had a good conversation about decoding. So if you're a student with a problem, you have a faculty problem. It's Dr. Newton. He had tons of problems with students in his career because he's mean, So the solution for many students at the University of West Georgia is I'm gonna go talk to the president. If you have a problem with the food program, I'm gonna go talk to the president. If you don't like the flooring, I'm gonna go talk to the president. And when I first got here, I had a number of folks around me who had been here for a while, said, oh yeah, that's happened for a long time. We'll try to make that stop. And I went, no, it's not, that's not a bad clearinghouse. Right? Because I'm the one phone number for the university. You call me, it all has to roll up to me. So if you don't like the flooring, I'll deal with that. I'll deal with the food program, toilets running, I'll deal with that. You don't like David Newton, I'll deal with that. And I say that because I'm in the unique position to be able to assign people work and understand everything else that they have on the plate. And one of the things that happens when we have different groups throughout the university kind of going and setting agendas for others, is that we start to lose communication clarity. And we start to take up time, even though time was assigned by somebody else. So I say that Provost and I come to every single meeting. Faculty Senate, we work closely with the Faculty Senate, do the same thing with Staff Advisory Council. We do that because everything at the university, doesn't matter what the issue is, we can address it. And if we need to bring in another subject matter expert, we bring in Jeremy McClellan because it's a facilities issue, or Scott McElroy, who's our chief business officer, Kim Scramble, our vice president of strategic enrollment management. We bring them in. But then we have full visibility of what the issues are, where they're happening, and whether they got resolved or not. So every time a student comes to me and says, hey, I have an issue, again, I've been harassed by Dr. Newton. I know that if I hear that twice from the same student, it hasn't been resolved. I have a cycle where we close the loop on every single issue that comes through, no matter how big or how small. We make certain that the right person actually finishes and resolves the issue. So I say that just so that we can organize the way in which we do our work as much as possible. And know that it doesn't really matter what the issue is, both Dr. Preston and myself will be the receivers of that. And then it's easier for us to go, all right, here is the team that's going to go on the field for that specific issue. I hope that makes sense for everybody. Did I miss anything in there? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. We were talking about some of the committee chairs, particularly wondering about how they interface with the work going on in like facilities or business and finance. And so there were just questions about how do we open that communication? And the clarity here is that the president and provost will be the means by which that communication is best managed.
Yeah, because if you come to me, if you go to Jeremy McClellan and articulate what you think you're looking for, he might over prepare, he might go in the wrong direction. For me, I'm going to get clarity on exactly what we're trying to accomplish and then give direction to get that. Even if it's not the person who you thought, because Jeremy McClellan's a great resource, but sometimes there are other people who are actually working more closely to the ground on a particular project that are the best resource on that. If there's any other question on that, please let me know. And I will leave you with one other piece, which Dr. Preston didn't address because he apparently died in the digital stream. We did go to the last Board of Regents meeting. And one of my responsibilities was to return the Chancellor's Cup, which is a $5 trophy. I'm referring to it as that, not to diminish it, but because the board chair for the Board of Regents referred to them as really fancy. Did you pay $5 for those? If you see it, it really is just, it's small. But there are 4. They are given to the university that has the largest enrollment increase for that semester. The University of West Georgia was awarded that cup in the August meeting based on summer enrollment increases. I then took it back to the Board of Regents. I returned it to the Office of the Chancellor. 2 hours later, we were awarded that again, for the largest enrollment increase by percentage in our sector. So we have ticked off Kennesaw State, Georgia Southern, and Valdosta, all of which I'm grateful for. Ticking them off makes a difference. That being said, bear in mind that nobody likes to watch somebody else go and get a trophy. And I'm looking at Dr. Fester because he and I come from the same world. When you watched somebody you were competing against beat you, the thing you didn't sleep about that night was you wanting to go and correct that wrong. And they will do that. We are in a hyper-competitive environment. We have had so many people at this university who have done incredible things in a million different ways. And I've said it before, it's not, it wasn't a silver bullet, it was silver buckshot. It's 1,000 things all pumping it every day to create the highest retention we've ever had, to create substantial enrollment increases in a really, really competitive environment where most people are not experiencing. Other institutions will look at that success and they will come and try to take market share from us. So when we receive the Chancellor's Cup, that should be a call for all of us to put our foot on the gas and lean into making certain that every student we touch knows that this university is the richest experience they're going to get with a doctoral student, undergraduate student, or dual enrollment student. Because if we do that, those numbers are going to continue to go up and look positive. If we take our foot off the gas, we've got plenty of institutions that have put in up billboards around us who want to take that market share in a dwindling student environment. So I'll say congratulations to every one of you, everybody else who works at this university for creating those results, and let's lean in and move forward. That seemed to be a long set of comments because John Preston passed away. Just want to make sure we fill those in. Any questions on any subject? Sir.
I want to respectfully make a couple of comments, share a concern, and then hopefully arrive at a solution. We call it the 2 p.m. on Wednesday comment made by the president at the Senate meeting. Where are the faculty members at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon?
Yeah.
It's an important point that perceptions matter. We are state employees and we are answerable to our taxpayers. So I absolutely say that perceptions are really important. Now, we are told as faculty members that we have to have detailed office hours and detailed schedules, in fact, posted right outside our offices, precisely for that reason, because at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, there might be faculty members who are teaching, who have wandered across to a lab or in a meeting. Now, the concern that I have, Mr. President, is that in modern times, we don't work 8 to 5 Monday to Friday, that many of us carry with us on the internet or otherwise an enormous amount of work, and we are working with our students via email or Postgen or otherwise when it's a Saturday or a Sunday at all kinds of hours. So now, in my opinion, it becomes a question of, so that was a concern. Now, I'm a former administrator myself, not as long as you, but I have been one. And my philosophy as an administrator always was, okay, sir or ma'am, you have stated a question or a problem. Now let us arrive at a solution together. So now I want to chat about that part. And this is not a rhetorical question, it's a real one. How can we as faculty and staff members do a better job of sharing with the legislators and indeed our taxpayers that we don't just work from 8 to 5 Monday to Friday, but we work at 24/7 sometimes. If I wake up at 5 a.m. and I see an email on my cell phone, I go and remedy that situation. So the question for you, for all of us really is, how do we improve the perception that seems to be out there? This is my 30th year at West Georgia. I've heard it before. Faculty members don't work hard. How do we change that perception?
Yeah. One, that's a Really well stated, really well stated. It's a huge problem. It's a persistent problem. You're right. I heard this same exact thing in my 20s. It's always been this way. It's just funders attach themselves to certain things sometimes, and there's a simplicity in they're not there, right? I don't have the answer to that. I will tell you that communicating it to legislators is something that we've done just perpetually. With lots and lots of evidence. It is unless we fundamentally change the way we do faculty work and faculty life, we're never going to fully get rid of that criticism. I'm not that worried about the criticism. I am more worried about what you honed in on. How do we change the perception? We can't change how they view it. We can change how we do our business. And I don't know what that is precisely, but that is something that we as a community need to sit and talk about, work through. I say like being in, sharing an office. Well, when I shared an office, that office was rarely empty, right? I'm not I also love having a private office, so I'm not suggesting we shift to that. I am suggesting that we sit and talk about what is possible, right? Is there a different way? I mean, is there a different way to do clustering or something to change that perception? Because it's not just one from legislators. We've heard that criticism from lots of things. But people don't understand the average work hours for a faculty member at a University of America is 51 per week. Not 40, right? But you would not get criticized the same way if we showed up at 9 and left at 5. We can get criticized at all, even though that is 11 hours less. So it's a tough one. I'll fall in love with that problem with you. We will be the defenders of it. And we have been successful in still getting those capital dollars. But the question is a little more persistent now in a post-COVID era than it was pre-COVID. But that's why I think we have to work on it. Hopefully we could that's probably a great faculty senate discovery session where we could sit and work through that. Dr. Hudson.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to that and say for faculty for whom office space is important, that's the connection. It's not the amount of work you do, it's the space in which you do that work. Because unfortunately, some of your anecdotes, I mean, I do that as well. The only phone in my life is this. And I frequently respond to emails of students, but I'm not in my office when I'm doing that. So if I'm a smart legislator and I hear that, I'm like, doesn't sound like you need that office. Sounds like you need to make sure that you're getting compensated properly for the work you do. But you're not in the office when you're responding to that email. Why do we need that space? We gotta make that connection. So for those of you for whom that is important, that's what you gotta do is connect your work to the space, not just the amount of work you do, but where you do it.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with another faculty member who, if she didn't have her office, she wouldn't have a storage facility that allows her to go and work off site, which is what we pay her to do, right? So that's the question. And there are some folks, I had a wonderful faculty member on my dissertation committee who, when I took my first class with him, he said, I have an office, on campus. I'm there 1 hour per week before this class. Please don't come in because I need to read before I come to class. He said, but I'm available at my desk, 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week, unless I take 1 week off per year to visit my son in Memphis and listen to live music. That's how he said it. And I went, wow. I could call him at 9:30 at night on a Saturday. He picked up. And so he was a fantastic. But if I would have gone to him and said, hey, Michael, would you take, his name is Michael too. So if I said, hey, would you be okay if we just gave you a hotel office? And he would probably go, yeah, great, fantastic. I'm there 1 hour a week. He only taught one graduate class. That was the nature of the work, right? We just have to sit and talk about how we do business, because 5 years from now, this is still going to be a question. And we know that in the post-COVID era, we have less occupancy in private offices on campus than we did among our faculty ranks. Doesn't mean that the work is, poorer or lesser, and it's just done differently, as you said. And half the time, we'd rather have you out of your office with students, with your phone, like, doing that stuff, and your job is actually a representative of probably better than anybody's. But that's not the decision calculus that we said.
Just to really reinforce this, the provost offered to have one of several meetings on
Yeah.
November 12th to address this, is about these background questions, not just specifically, how do you want to utilize your office, in Pafford when it's, built out or whatever. It is to really get at the heart of this. And I hope you're noticing, and I think I can speak with confidence on behalf of the president and provost, the trend of more discovery sessions, more listening sessions, more interactions in Senate and elsewhere, where we are demonstrating the value of what can happen when people come together and discuss even very challenging problems. So this is not like a one-off. We will continue to deal with this bigger issue around space and our being here and how we work, as well as the other things we've been talking about this semester and into next semester. So I think I'm fair in saying that trend, wanting to have more interaction, more communication, more engagement around the problems that we all face together, is going to be happening. And I just want to note that the reception after this meeting is very much in that spirit, that we get to meet with and talk with our collaborators in staff and administrative roles. So just a plug to go to that meeting on the 12th to demonstrate your interest and support in this. I know that's not a great date for everybody, but it will be the first of many. But I do hope the first kicks off with a lot of good participation.
Yeah, I would also say one other thing, that there doesn't have to be one solution to these types of problems. We could have 10. We could have 10 different formulations for how we use space. Please.
I don't understand maybe the nature of the conversation that you and Dr. Weaver had about outreach, particularly on behalf of from chairs of committees to the VP level. What I had understood, and maybe I have misperceived this or misunderstood something, but a particular problem that I've experienced on the budget committee is that we have designated administrative representatives from various units, and some of those designees have not appeared to any of the meetings. So I'm not sure, maybe that's a separate issue.
No, that's exactly same type of issue. You saying that to the president right now is exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah, same type of issue. So no, let's take that.
Okay, because you said, I was a little concerned when you said, don't go setting agendas for others, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
No,
does this mean I emailed
So budget committee is a perfect example. Budget committee is a perfect example. You have a chair of the budget committee who shows up in the vice president's office and kind of asks for a bunch of information.
Oh,
right?
no, I couldn't do that. I mean, the
Right.
precedent is wonderful anyway, but.
But we've had previous people who have.
Yeah.
Well, and then the vice president is obligated to call me and go, am I supposed to be working on this? Because this is going to take, 10 hours to do. Right? When the request really was like for all of this information, but it was really just, I need to understand X. And there was a simpler way to get there. That's why I say if it goes, your issue of if you don't have somebody who's present, I can solve that in a heartbeat. Right? And I say that because I'm the one who assigns everybody's time in one way or another. Right? I mean, your time is assigned by a dean of the library. Well, the dean of the library reports to the provost and the provost reports to me. So if we don't have the right support, forget whoever is associated with it, we're going to find the best person. Because sometimes I've seen, in some of the literature that says this is the designated administrator, that administrative role doesn't even exist anymore, or we've really assigned the work differently, and that's from a different time. So let's just add, if you communicate the problem that way of, hey, I need a subject matter expert to be part of this, we'll go solve that problem. But I'm happy to go and do that myself. So they will show up.
Just to add to that, it could be that it is a matter of one of our representatives has not been present, so We want the provost and president to know because they can make that assignment, make sure that's happening. It could also be that you're dealing with an agenda item that requires you to interact with a different vice president or associate vice president in an area not typically among your membership. Again, that would be a good case to open the communication with the president and provost so they can make sure that happens.
So are Gavin and I in trouble for being part of the pilot? This is what because Gavin is the chair.
They're talking about the Microsoft relation. They got involved.
What problems occur, you know?
Good trouble.
Like running through my mind.
Well, and whatever it is, I mean, you know, you have, Dr. Condos kind of raising this larger global issue, right? Well, it's not for me to just designate an answer. It is for us to lay it on the table and say, okay, what's the best way to work on that? Best way to work on that is for all of us to go through a discovery session and kind of do facilitation. This is a different problem. We just don't have the right support for the budget committee. I will make certain the right support is in place. And if you have an issue with that, again, you're either going to reach out to Dr. Robert to me. And I say that only because it streamlines communication. Yeah. Or John.
Yeah. President. Any other questions for the president?
I just have a comment that could potentially complicate the structure of committees and the bylaw.
Which could?
The idea that if, you know, an administrator is supposed to be a person on the committee, but it may not be the right person or the right office. It may just be something.
We have to update the bylaw.
It's a cleanup piece.
Yeah.
And I would suggest, as having done that same cleanup at other institutions too, we should, instead of designating titles, which do change from time to time, especially in changing environment, designate that we are going to arrive at the beginning of each fiscal year, the assignments, the administrators that are assigned, and then the president will make those designations because it'll just be a cleaner process for it.
Yeah.
Then if like we assigned the budget director, but the problems kept being problems that were really best addressed by the vice president, then we would redo that.
Yeah,
have a chance to.
That might be a good bylaw change. Thank you. Other comments or questions before we move on? Thank you so much, President Kelly. Okay, so just a couple updates on the general information side of things. We have now 3 Senate-wide tasks. We're going to be discussing the third one a little bit today, but we have workload, we have the scheduling, and we're going to have intellectual property. The spreadsheet that we put out last meeting is there for you. Please go and sign up. We will be assigning task force leaders as we enter into the next semester to really get that work going. So if you want to be involved in any of those Senate-wide tasks, please do put a little X there or contact me if you have questions about it so we can get those task forces in place and working effectively. And there may be others that we will develop as we go, including perhaps a task force to deal with things like hoteling space and utilization and how to. I was kind of chuckling to myself because university systems have for a long time tried to audit the workload of faculty, and it's just an impossible thing to do because I have ideas that occur to me at midnight about what I'm going to write and in my dreams. And, you know, I'm never not working as a faculty, it seems. So I think we could take that up in a really thoughtful way. And the provost's generous offer to work with us on that, I think we should respond. So that may be a 4th task. We'll see how that goes. With that said, anything in general from committee chairs? Okay, let's turn the time over to Kim for UPC.
UPC submitted 23 items for a vote and we received no questions about those. So if everyone is ready then to vote on these 23 new or revisions or new items from the UPC. Go ahead with that. So all in favor? Okay, and all opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, thank you so much. And then there were 2 information items that are listed in your agenda.
Thank you. And thank you to the UPC for so much diligent work this semester. Really appreciate all that effort. Our chair of the GPC is out sick today, so I'm going to go ahead and call for that vote. I don't believe she did not report to me that there are any issues with any of the courses listed there. There are not a lot of changes. I think there's two, one to sociology, one to psych. So we'll go ahead and put that forward for a vote as well. So all those in favor of those GPC items, please indicate. Okay, any objections? Abstentions? Okay. And there were a few information items there as well. And Amy Cuomo for Faculty Development Committee.
So we were charged by the Board of Regents to make a change to the UWG handbook. And it's in the agenda, and it's a small change, and it goes in due process mechanism after negative performance improvement plan. For non-tenured faculty members, the PRP and substitute steps are suggested for development purposes, but non-tenured faculty may be non-renewed regardless if a PRP has been implemented or not. For guidance on non-renewal, please see Board Policy 8.3.4, Notice of Employee Resignation. This is not a change, it's just a clarification sent by the board.
You vote?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
All in favor? Same sign?
Who doesn't want to watch?
Any objections? You got it on the.
Who doesn't want to watch?
Oh, just 1 second, folks.
Okay. Those of you online, if you could indicate your, in the chat, your approval, objection, or abstention to this item, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Laura.
thank you so much.
That's gonna take, we're gonna end that online.
Sorry.
Just letting them.
Okay, well, we're a little bit into a speed round for our discussion today, but I'm excited to open this up for discussion. The topic being intellectual property. We did share some background documentation from the USG and AAUP around intellectual property. Some of you might be wondering, why are we talking about intellectual property? Well, there are three areas of question or concern that have come up in the last semester, especially, that I wanted to have us maybe open up and discuss as a general item for the Senate. The first of these would be what happens when faculty, staff, students, whoever it might be, generate products that generate revenue. So if you write a textbook and you do it at the university using the university computer in your office, maybe working with TAs to gather research and supportive sources of information and so on, and you produce a textbook and that textbook generates income of some kind. The question has come up, well, whose income is it? Who gets that revenue? Everything from royalties and so on. My conversations with the provost about this have been that the university is not going to be interested or concerned about that unless the revenue starts to get into a high number. What that high number is, though, I mean, I've heard him say something like $50,000, but I think it was just, trying it on. So we would want to get ahead of such a thing if we care about it, to make sure that that kind of a vague number gets clarified if we want for policy purposes. And then if there is a cutoff, a point at which the revenue becomes of university concern, then those percentages would have to be worked out as well. So that's one area, may not apply to any of us. I've written books and happily get a meal once a year on the royalties. For me and sometimes my wife, depending on the year. So it may not apply to a number of us, but we also do have now the Research Corporation, the University Research Corporation, things of that nature. There may be things on the horizon that would generate considerable revenue. And so having a policy that gets ahead of that. So that would be one item we might discuss. A second one that has come up in both emails to me and in the provost council meeting is a question about common course components. As we develop more and more of this and we put it into CourseDen, the question has come up, who do those elements belong to? Especially content. So lectures, videos, materials that we put onto CourseDen, are those property of the faculty or are they property of the university or shared in some way? Again, we don't really have a policy that's managing us through that process in a clear way. So this would be an area we could address if we were so inclined. The third area is, and this has come up again through some experiences some faculty have had. This is about when you do a project that results in a publication for a center on campus or an institution on campus. And the question that came up, and I've talked to the provost about a little bit, is the author the center? Is the author the director of the center and then the faculty who did the work by contract? Or how does that all get worked out? And how do you get your promotion and tenure credit? Do you, even if it says officially that the center is an author of a publication that you were maybe even hired to produce, can you list that in your CV and use that as an evidentiary source for promotion, tenure, PTR, things of that sort? So those are the three things that I'm hoping we can discuss. We'll probably take something like 10 minutes each on them, kind of a speed round, as I said. And some may be more or less relevant to you or of concern to you, so I understand that, but I hope we can get into small groups and have some productive, initial thoughts and discussion about products that generate revenue, how we manage that in policy, the course components, what policies do we need around that to make sure that we understand and work together to have proper ownership, shared, individual, however it works out. And then the authorship and work done for a center and how we manage that with promotion and tenure, especially if you're not listed as an author in the document. Everyone okay with that or clear with that? A little drier than some of our other topics, but I think really important. So let's go ahead and break into small groups. We will discuss until just before 3 o'clock, and then we'll kind of gather again and kind of get some general comments on this. Again, first 10 minutes on the revenue generation, second 10 minutes on common course components, third 10 minutes on if we do authorship for a center, how does that get all worked out? Farouk, before we start.
Generation, the university, of course, is not a part of UWG, well-defined formula, because they have individuals who come up with medications that are picked up by the FDA. And so we have a well-defined structure for how much goes through the individual in whose lab the medicine was discovered. Does the UWG have policies like this that you might be aware of?
The only policy I'm aware of is the one we shared by a link in the addendum to the agenda. I don't believe it gets into that specific point you're making. So maybe that's a model that can help us. Maybe we should look into that. So please discuss that with your group. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all.
I'm not required.
And again, if you have someone who could take notes, that would be great, just so I can collect those at the end. Folks online able to try to group up?
So I just take my life lunch and I take a rest out. I spend it, that's how I feel. So. Yeah.
So yes, there are. Well, even with that example. We developed this allocation. Well, I mean, if you right on we should do work of this thing. Not necessarily no, that's true. That's exactly it.
That could be really tricky though. Right, so that's part of the contract you sign, you have to create a contract with all of this. Oh, that is. That's kind of odd.
And I say, you make your decision. Yeah.
You can have like, whatever I got it, like, for the day. That's
There's some standard writing. There's document and basically yours. I mean, but yeah. In other words, that parts are on track, but That would be great, because in this, I can't pay solve. Contracted. That is skill. And part of the. We do a number of this type of thing.
Okay, folks, about one more minute, and then we'll come together.
The biggie, I was a little late because there were some students doing presentations. So if it is appropriate, please get me. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember a really bad example. We gotta go.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Come back to me. Wrap up your final thoughts. So I really appreciate you taking time with this. I was able to get to several groups and really good thoughts and comments discussed. I think this will be an important task for us to look at for a number of reasons. There's just a lot of questions around what belongs to whom, and if you share it with somebody and they use it, does it then become theirs? And all kinds of interesting questions. But just to kind of summarize a few things that the provost said on these, and I just want to, and he could speak for himself, so don't hold me to this being exact, but essentially on this, there was the mindset of it's yours, your revenue up until some point, and the point we need to either define, or I don't know, someone in the dark, shadow shows up and just says, you went too far. It's time to pull some. I don't know how that's going to work. So we need probably something around this. So I don't want there to be an invisible amount that I'm not aware of, and then I get in trouble. So it'd be nice if we thought about if there is a point of income or revenue that we need to identify, maybe we should make recommendations. This one, it's a little more pressing and relevant to everybody, because we do generate course components that we put on CourseDen using university computers and other things, and the question about whether those things then belong solely to us, even though they're temporarily on CourseDen, or do they stay on CourseDen and they could be used by new instructors who come in, or just could they then take those course components if they want and use them themselves, even if they go to another institution? Like, there's a lot of questions around this one, so I think this needs some attention. The provost has said when he was thinking about the next phase of course components. So in addition to gradebook and syllabi, how about content? What you actually put in as content. He was like, as acceptable or where acceptable, but acceptable has to be worked out. So that would be something we could do as a matter of our work, is kind of determine what is an acceptable sharing of something on CourseDen. Should you load it up through the CourseDen, software itself? Should you have a link to a YouTube that's your own private YouTube where you keep it there? These kinds of things need to be addressed. So I think this definitely needs some attention. On this last one, the issue that kind of prompted all of this, the solution I think was that the authorship was the center, but that the individual authors who developed the product could use it in their CV and in their P&T process. That may be good, that may be not, I don't know. But as we have more centers, research corporations, things like that, I think it's important to know like what really is mine, yours, where does authorship go? Was I paid to do this, or did I do it as part of my service? I mean, all those things come in. So I hope we can continue to have fruitful dialogue about this. If you have ideas that come to you or you want to participate on the task force, please do sign up or let me know. And we'll continue to try to address, I think, a very important topic, especially going forward. We didn't even talk about AI, where the ownership belongs in those kind of cases. So we'll just leave that off. All right, with that said, we're going to go ahead and adjourn. And for those of you who are physically present, the reception will be taking place out in the foyer here. This is really important from my perspective as the Senate Chair, because we're going to have opportunity to interact with staff advisory council members. I've long wanted to improve the collaboration and just communication between faculty senate and the staff advisory council. It's just really hard to find time to do it on both sides. So an opportunity like this, I hope you will interact with and talk with members of the staff advisory council and show a willing spirit to collaborate, even if that's sometimes hard to accomplish with time. And then, of course, executive administrators will be there. And I believe deans have also been invited. So this is a good opportunity to work that shared governance, collaborative spirit with our administration as well. So thank you for being here for that. Enjoy the food and drink, and thanks for a great semester. We'll see you guys all back in January for more Senate work. Thank you again.
Thank you. That.
I was like.